Oh boy. Okay, so looks like we're good to go. All right, so section five, integration, what becomes possible when you combine it all. So this is just all the little bits and pieces that I think only make sense once we've been through all the stuff that we've been through so far. Some of it's just kind of bits and pieces, but hopefully it'll all make some sense. So first up, homework discussion. So as a reminder, homework was the various meditative or attention type practices. So we had the feel good practice where I recorded that thing, the do nothing, which we did in class, and the noting, which we did in class, at least one form of it. So yeah, or any other experiments that you may have done this week, all worth talking about.
I did a little bit of like the do nothing
Hmm.
because I feel like I don't know, it just feels like it would be useful, but I become too sleepy during it.
Hmm.
I feel like I need to like maybe do a little bit of noting in the beginning and then do nothing. But like once I'm feeling sleepy, like start doing it. But like if I'm just doing do nothing right now, I become too relaxed.
Yeah, yeah, that's I've definitely felt that. That guy Shinzen I talked to you about last time, who has formatted a lot of these things for a Western audience. He definitely like he can try. He says do nothing and noting are kind of opposing practices where if you feel sleepy and spacey, doing do nothing, then do nothing. And if you feel like restless or like, too tense during noting, then try do nothing. So that hits for me.
I tried the same too, just to do nothing. What I found helped is I went outside and just sat there, and rather than like in my office inside. I don't know if it's probably just the context
Hmm.
of being outside, and there's less things like at my immediate disposal to kind of like be tempted to do. But that seemed to help, I guess.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like setting posture too. Um, there's always the image of the person sitting on that sort of cushion thing, meditating, and that does a good job of like making you less sleepy, but it also like my back is not very symmetrical and I get like tight and tense, and you can kind of power through it, but that's not my style. Um, some people like, I mean, meditating lying down will not help with the sleeping problem, but for some of the feel good stuff, it actually can be super, super helpful. I did a little experiment this week, but I'll talk about it later. Kind of put it into a slide.
I was just going to mention that I had mentioned to you, Alex, about the Fear of Flying course.
Okay,
And
you're kind of
the
breaking
most
up.
I'm breaking up.
Yeah.
Mm.
You can try again, and if it's still breaking up, then well, it was fine before. But if it's still breaking up in a second, then you could type it in chat and I could read it.
Okay. How's this sound? Still
Is
breaking
it the
up?
same as we were talking about in WhatsApp?
Yeah. Can, I mean, am I coming through okay or not?
Yeah, you're still breaking up. Maybe typing it out
Okay.
would be better.
All right. I'll do my best.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be fine in a moment. But while you're doing that, I will get into the lesson because there's, as usual, a lot of material. I'll try to force everything into a small amount of time. So yeah, as a recap for this course, where we've been, we talked about the model, the prediction machine that is our brain and nervous system, how it assigns valence, feel good and feel bad, to experiences for us. They're not objective things, and our attention is the training signal that trains this model. We learned why standard advice sometimes fails, how to be your own detective on this whole path, embodying signal, like working with the body itself, giving us some nicer signals to pay attention to. And then with attention and processing, the attention practices, meditation practices that help us to use all this to train our brains, our nervous systems that to process things a little bit nicer. So today, suffering, stuckness, and then what's possible. Okay, so Shinzen Young, I talked about a little bit before. This American dude who went to Japan and became a monk for a while and did all these hardcore sitting under the waterfall for 100 days, whatever. And then he came back to America and he's really connected with scientists, experimenting with not only making good meditation instruction for Western people, but also using science, using like ultrasound and stuff to see can we shortcut any of these processes. And there's some really cool stuff going on. Anyways, one of the things that he's kind of well known for is this equation for suffering. And basically the idea that suffering is discomfort times resistance. So discomfort meaning raw, unpleasant sensation, pain, cold, hunger, fear, sadness, etc. And working on the body and signal stuff from this class helps to make this side less nasty, at least a little bit. And then resistance is everything that we add on top of that. Tensing, wishing that it would stop, stories about what the sensation means, fear about it. Attention and processing works here. And so if you can make either side 0, then your suffering will be roughly 0, even if the other side or the other element is kind of nasty. This whole resistance idea, there's this one concept in Buddhism called the second arrow, where like you can have something that happens to you that sucks, but the thing that hurts more is you reacting to the suck. And you probably experienced this. There's just so many so many cases in life when the real suffering is stuff that we're doing to ourselves before the actual bad thing happens.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
You say like if either of those sides is 0,
yeah,
then there's no suffering.
yeah.
But like, is that really true? Like for people who are experiencing like chronic pain and like,
Yeah.
obviously you've mentioned, it's good to address issues that are happening in your
Yes.
body that you can, if you have like chronic illness or pain. But yeah, I guess just
Yes. So yes, I agree with you. This is just a model, and I used to have on here all models are wrong. I just kind of trimmed stuff, but yes, all models are wrong. This one is useful. But also, it's probably more true than most people realize. The amount of resistance that we have is extremely non-obvious at first. And while it's true, there is some level of inherent coupling between pain and suffering, it's probably much lower than most people intuitively realize. I know of stories of people who had completely debilitating chronic pain where they could barely even listen to a description of, one of the exercises that we have gone through. And over a course of, it was slow because they could barely do anything. But over the course of months, it actually became manageable. So there are some data points that even if you can't get it to 0, you can get it to the point where it makes a big difference. Also, we can kind of manufacture discomfort for ourselves too. So that's another subtle thing that we realize exactly how we're doing it as we pay more attention. But thank you for calling that out, because I want to make sure to mention all models are wrong. So here's another definition I kind of like. What is suffering when mind bonk itself? Of course, by someone named Bliss Bra. Okay, so tensing against the past. And this is something that is a little bit subtle, but we have the equipment to look at this now. So we know that sensory processing takes time. There's a delay between experiencing something and then, or between something happening and our sense picking it up and our brain rendering that moment in consciousness. So a quarter second is something that's sometimes thrown around for this. But we often, like some of our suffering is literally tensing against it, whether that's mentally or literally physically, squeezing a muscle because something that we think is going to happen is going to suck, or something that we've observed happening is going to suck. And when we do that, we're actually tensing to try to change something that already happened in the past. We're kind of contracting against a memory, hoping to change it. And the more time you spend with this, the more kind of ridiculous it seems. And that's just how we're kind of programmed. The system learned to brace because sometimes bracing helps. If you're literally going to get hit with something physically, then bracing will help. But there are so many ways that our physical bodies tense against things that tensing would have no way of making any better. But it still fires the same way. So yeah, there is kind of a gentle ridiculousness to it. Oh, my muscle, my belly's doing that thing again. We don't have to fight it, but just recognizing it, I think, can soften this a little bit. All right, so spotting this kind of resistance, becoming aware of it without, again, resisting the resistance is a step towards doing it just a little bit less. So like notice what happens in your body when you imagine or you notice like a glass sliding towards the edge of the table, like there's some tension, like, oh, what, like, am I gonna have to grab it? Like, I should just push it off. Let's see what happens. No. The reflex to brace against cold water. I hate cold water. I can manage it a little better than I used to with all this stuff, but still. The subtle clench inside of your body, maybe your chest, when someone says something you disagree with. But seeing these things clearly with a little compassion for ourselves is often more effective than trying to forcibly relax it. Just like our do nothing meditation, we not trying to not try, but trying to, or just dropping the try. The language is very hard because it's capturing a subtle thing. But when we witness this stuff with a little compassion for ourselves, then there's a little bit of letting go that can happen just on its own. One description of this kind of some of the many kinds of subtle tension there are. Romeo Stevens is a Buddhist scholar. He kind of active in some of the online communities that I participate in. This is one of his descriptions of, there's a term called tanha from the old Pali language, which is the one that a lot of the old Buddhist texts are written in. And this description of tanha is this particular kind of tension that they say is necessary for actual suffering. The experience of suffering goes through this state of tanha. And this is the English description that he gave. So imagine something you aren't finished with being pulled out of your hand and you tensing your fingers to resist. And calling back a few slides, that thing could have already left our hand by that moment, and yet we're still trying to change the past by squeezing against it in some way. So let's do a practice. Call this sensory fluidity. It's inspired by, I went to Japan last November and I got to do a short tour of one of the temples there. And we did a meditation practice there. It was like one of those Airbnb experiences. It was great fun. And we all sat in this room. It was like me, my wife, one German lady, and the tour guide, and like 20 Japanese people, and the monk who only talked Japanese. And he had his big old Zen stick, and you could, if you wanted to, you do your little bow thing, and he'll come over and whack you on the shoulder a few times. And one thing I noticed was, we were sitting and saying, of course, they're not going to do it if you don't want to, because you're just on a tour. But the monks, they really get it. If they mess up, they really get it. So as I was doing this, I noticed there's all these random whacking sounds, and it was really interesting to just let them pass through me, because the first ones are like wanting to brace against it, like this sucks. Like you're supposed to meditate in like peaceful environment with like babbling brooks, and this guy just whacking people this whole time. But it was actually really cool. And so um I'm not going to do anything violent. But I would like to experience this a little bit, if that's an acceptable level of noise for everybody. I don't want to you know, give any people bad memories or anything or call up anything. But if we're okay with a little bit of noise, can I like, are we okay? Cool. Thank you. All right, so this is a very simple thing. I talked a little bit about open awareness. So basically, just as I said, just be aware of your senses, eyes closed or softly open. If you notice thoughts, that's fine. Just come back to your senses. And there will be noises. So when you notice something, see if you can just let it pass through you like a wave. So let's give this about 6 minutes. All right. Oh, and for the people who are online, Zoom does noise reduction, and I don't want that to happen at all. So let's see what I can do. There is a thing here that will let me take off. Okay, so I've tried changing this to our people online. Did you hear that?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
It's hard to hear you though. It's gotten very quiet. I guess that's okay though.
Okay, I'll reset it once I finish with this. And you'll hear my bell this time too. Even better. How'd that land?
I hated every second of that. I genuinely I just wanted it to be over.
Wow.
I don't know, it irked me that there was a pattern, but no pattern. You kept doing 3 hits. I was like, why is it always 3? But then the timing wouldn't be consistent. And then on top of that, I'm on the couch so I could feel it on as well as
Oh, that's
hearing
fair.
it. And I'm like, why can't you just do 4 or just 1 tap? And then I was searching for patterns and it was really frustrating. And then I'm like, I gotta let it go. Then that didn't work. And I'm like, this just needs to be done with. I need to just run the clock.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, that was kind of the pattern that the guy did. It would be one shoulder, 2 weaker, and then one whack, and then 2 weaker, and then one whack.
And in my head, I'm like, there has to be a reason. And I'm like, what if there was no reason? I just went through a lot of existential crisis.
Wow. Okay.
I was trying not to think about the memory of the loud sound for a few seconds after, but it sort of kept reverberating.
I was okay with it. It was making me think about other situations where it's been similar in the sense that there's been a annoying stimulus that's outside of my control, that's inconsistent, but that's much more annoying for whatever reason than that, where I have not tolerated it well.
Okay.
And also just knowing we were having a conversation with someone about intermittent pain and how that's particularly awful for people when it's unpredictable, and it was just making me, similarly to the comment that I had on the other slide, it was making me think about what's the limit where it's no amount of Zen is going to help you. This is an actual painful thing.
Yeah, the limit is very high. But that limit may take a lot of practice. I mean, you all seen the photo of the one monk who lit himself on fire to protest something. And he was just sitting there. And there's no way I could sit there at all. No matter how determined I was in that kind of suffering, there's no way I could do it. And I'm absolutely sure he was suffering very deeply. But still, he got some sort of ability to be with that sensation that let him do that thing. So, yeah, another Shinzen story. He talks about how he doesn't have a thyroid, and they just decided they wanted to do some experiments on him, and he was okay with it. And the experiment involved measuring him while not giving him any thyroid hormones. So that degraded his ability. It sucks. The sensation of that sucks. But also it degraded his ability to even think. He couldn't even put together a thought. But his training, his experience with these sort of practices was enough that he was okay. So, yeah.
So there's a similar story I read from Daniel Ingram, who's similar to Shinzen Youngster, a person who's wanting a couple sets of millions or something, very very much. But he had a story about how he was driving somewhere and these cats passed a kidney stone.
Oh.
And it was very painful, but he was saying about how if he could not have the achievement, the meditation practice that had before, it would have even more terrible.
Okay, so this is my practice from this week. Something that I realized myself. So let's give you the story. I made some bullet points, but basically I've been realizing over the last while that there were these recurring times when things just started to suck a little bit. It's I was having fun and then things started to suck and I couldn't really place why. And I think this story is kind of encapsulates what I'm glad that I can do, and I hope that y'all will be able to do, putting together some of these things in this course. So I had these moments that kind of sucked, and I didn't know why. And how did this go? I actually had a short session with a rather experienced meditation guy because I mentioned I did a retreat and I got a lot of good stuff out of it, and then I like wasn't able to do the cool stuff anymore, and trying to figure out what's going on. And I realized that like I'm trying to like to I'm using too much effort in some weird way. I'm kind of managing my experience a little bit, and I don't really understand how or why that's happening. And he's like, well, why don't you try doing some of that open awareness, but focus on the body. Just keep your sensation, your awareness on your body sensation, and just there's no temptation to try to make it feel good or to do anything else. Just like you're gonna sit for whatever time and then just do that. So okay, I did that. And I started to realize, oh yeah, I'm trying to manage my enjoyment up. And I'm also trying to manage my enjoyment down at the same time for very different reasons that were going on in different parts of my head for different reasons. And I was also trying to manage my enjoyment, like not going up or down. And they all sucked in different ways, and none of them did what I wanted them to do. And once I finally realized this, I'm like, oh, well, actually not doing that is something I can do. I can stop doing this. And stopping doing this actually took effort, so it still tired me out. But I was able to enjoy things way more. And this just happened last week. So like the insights that you'll have if you do this kind of thing are just random. You cannot predict them. But like, yeah, it's made a big difference for me. So yeah, I was trying to push pleasure up. I should feel better. Why can't I enjoy this? This situation should be great. But that prevented the enjoyment. Counterintuitively, because that is the kind of tension from where you're trying to control things in the world by squeezing something in your chest or in your mind or whatever. Simultaneously, not a very good strategy, trying to push pleasure down. It wouldn't feel right to be happy right now. That also prevents enjoyment, but it practices doing that. So in the future, when you want to enjoy things, now you've got this muscle memory of blocking it. And then flattening it out. I need to stay calm. My nervous system's a little bit too tense, too like I had too much coffee. Like I really shouldn't like try to be, I'm gonna feel bad if I do this. But that also, because I'm using tension to do this, prevents the calm I was going for. And this is a long-term thing that's important for me. Reduces my window of tolerance. So this is my own experiential thing. This may be different for you, but trying to like, I'm not feeling great. I'm going to withdraw. That just establishes a pattern that I need to withdraw from activating things, from whatever it was I was doing, and makes me feel worse in the long run. So this mind-body move of needing to manage was just killing whatever I was trying to do. And yeah, thankfully that was one thing that I could actually do less a little bit, and it's really paid off. So one of the analogies that came up, it was like I was trying so hard to pedal a bike, and I realized it was an e-bike, and I was like, I just don't have to pedal. It would start going if I just stopped trying to do the thing. And yeah, it worked. It wants to go. It can even accelerate on its own, but what I thought were the pedals were the brakes.
Do you have any advice for how to resist those, deliberate efforts to try to affect your experience?
A lot of these things are just like really subtle mind-body moves that it would be very hard to communicate just because the limitations of language and, um, oftentimes the realization kind of comes with a mental move. Kind of just like I mentioned John Sarno in some of the earlier lessons, the one who does the back pain stuff. And just people reading his books, in a lot of cases, noticeably reduces their pain. And it's just the mind, in making that connection, finds a move that it can do in the moment. There's a lot of stuff that's been written about actual methods. and be totally happy to like go through potential debugging, outside of class, but I think that's the easiest. Like a lot of the big wins are like that. All right, chat's good. So I want to talk briefly about parts and stuckness. So I've talked a little bit about IFS, internal family systems type work, or the broader category of parts work, and I found this to be absolutely overpowered. And this is another one of the areas where the research is just so far behind. And so a lot of the stuff I can cite studies and stuff for you. There is one study that's been done on IFS for one particular, uh, I think it's a pain management thing. And the study was successful. And, oh, now you can say IFS is evidence-backed. And I don't want to like downplay the importance of doing good research. But this is one where this is largely experiential, talking with, looking into my own experiences, but also friends that I know, things like that. So sometimes it feels like we're being blocked in something we want to do. Maybe we want to do something and don't do it. Maybe there's some kind of internal no. Maybe it doesn't feel like a no. Maybe it just feels like nothing's happening. So there is this model of the self, the consciousness, called the parts model. And there is the most well-known modality that uses it is internal family systems, but it has parallels to a lot of other ones. I think it ties into the Jungian concept of complexes. It ties into, there's one called Hakomi that couples this with body work and somatic stuff. But basically, this is a pattern that I've had happen a lot with me, and I know it happens a lot with others. So you've experienced something you couldn't handle, your mind built a prediction, and has been running that ever since, even though your life has changed. This experience can be viewed as a part of yourself with its own fears and desires. By reaching out to these parts with compassion, we can help them update. It's a really strange feeling it's like, oh, I've been doing this thing for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, and I've never really understood why. But connecting with this is like, oh yeah, I feel like there's this little guy stuck in this situation that there's been this lack of connection to help it update, to realize that I'm not in this situation anymore. I don't need to do this thing anymore. So maybe you learned it's not okay to let your guard down and feel safe. Maybe something you needed to help you cope isn't helping you anymore. So we can work with this, and this is an entire, not a whole session, but an entire like months or years of work in itself. But just some easier ways that we can start to feel it. We can start to feel into this. Yoshi. So if you are experiencing a situation,
Yoshi,
Yoshi,
nudge, nudge, nudge.
yeah. So if there's some kind of unexplained difficulty with something, lingering feelings from the past that you don't really have a view into, then maybe try some. You can ask internally and gently, bringing your presence to this, your awareness to it. What is this behavior or difficulty protecting me from? Was there a pattern that in the past this was useful? What are you afraid would happen if we could drop this? Or what would you have to feel if you couldn't feel the coping mechanism? Maybe anger is being used to hide the sadness or something. And you don't feel the sadness at all because the anger is safer. And just kind of taking a moment to be fully present with yourself and just ask. Like you can even literally ask out loud if that feels comfortable to you, or just silently, and just see what happens. or is this thing still true in my life right now? It's so easy to for parts of our minds to get stuck in some ways in the past. So I found these very, very helpful. And then also just to having self-compassion, self-love, all this stuff can be pretty tough, can be hard, can be not natural. But when you have this other thing, other part of yourself, I found that a little bit easier. It's like, oh gosh, like I've been doing this thing for the last X years and it's been making me suffer, but looking at it through the lens of, oh, this is just some part of me and it didn't really get that I'm not in this situation anymore. Like I can have a little compassion for that. So that's been very helpful too.
Question.
Yeah.
Maybe this is getting too into it with kind of the more therapy oriented stuff, and obviously you have said you are not a professional.
Mhm.
But I'm curious what your or others' experiences have been with, like, sometimes it feels like it's important to analyze,
Hmm.
and then sometimes it feels like this is just a feeling that I'm having. Like, I'm about to get my period and I feel depressed. And maybe I don't need to analyze it that much and it's actually not that helpful. And that is just more like dwelling on it and
Yeah.
making the suffering worse when I could just be focusing on something else and accepting the suffering. So I'm curious what your experience has been with finding when to probe and when to redirect.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely done some more conventional therapy stuff too, both like, in the medical system therapist doing CBT or DBT or whatever. Um, and that was helpful at the time, but I didn't have any like huge mind-blowing moments with it. I will say that there have been a bunch of situations where I really felt that emotion bubbling up. I'm one of those people who has a hard time feeling stuff. But these times I felt something happening like I can't handle this. Like there's actual emotion bubbling up. And those were the times to really lean into the parts work stuff. Because that was like, oh shit, like there is really something there. And I don't have the ability to withhold myself from experiencing this anymore if I just go into it a little bit. And those were the big breakthroughs that, affected me for months or years after that. The analysis stuff is great. It's like super important too. But it's a very felt sense sort of thing for me. Like when do I push the parts work sort of thing?
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like I would describe myself very differently. I feel like I feel a lot of emotions a lot of the time. So sometimes I'm learning how to sometimes not analyze it and just be like, just be in a bad mood or just
Yeah.
don't think about it that hard. Just let it be. And I actually find that helpful sometimes.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. That happens less for me. But yeah. I think that's a lot of this, like why so much of this is learning for ourselves because like our experiences are just different and my intuition may not match what works for you.
Yeah, I feel like both reasons are valid or both approaches are valid because everyone just has a natural different baseline. It's like saying you're wet, so you need to dry off, and you're dry, so you need to put on some lotion. Like they're both, you're just trying to like meet at the same kind of equivalency, but you're just doing it in different ways because your baselines are on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. And we spend more time on our side of the spectrum, so we're like more no more tricks for that end of it. Yeah, I will say that it's some of those intense moments where I couldn't do shit about anything, like the meditative type practices where I was not trying to analyze it were helpful. So I like to do a little micro practice in this vein. So in this, we're just literally gonna close our eyes or soften our focus for literally like just over a minute. And when you do this, I'll read off a little bit of instructions and we can give this a try together. And for people on the internet, I'm doing the bell right now. Okay. So while we're here, you don't need to find anything or solve anything. But if it feels right, just let your mind and body system know that whatever it's been working on, whatever patterns are starting to come into focus, or maybe those that haven't yet, it has your attention and your permission. And then just listen for a moment. I'll give us a minute to do that. And that's the bell. Yeah, I was trying to make a practice that captured a little bit of my own story with this managing stuff. And I realized there's no way I can do that because it's just about giving ourselves moments here and there to listen. So if something came up, that's great, but we can never force it. We can just listen. All right. Nothing in the chat. All right, let's talk about all that woo-woo crap about beauty and perfection and bliss. So there's a lot of people, meditation type people, who say things like underneath everything is love, or talking about perfection, or this kind of crap. And this all sounded ridiculous to me, especially because like I've been through a lot of anhedonia, unable to experience anything pleasurable or happy, um, just anxiety and tension every day. And that idea seemed impossible, almost insulting. What is at the bottom of it all is terror. Thank you very much. And you're not going to change that. But I'm kind of starting to see what people are talking about. I'm definitely not one of those maximum blissed out people, but I can see the direction. And I think there's actually a lot of hope here. So the practices don't add happiness from the outside, or at least they don't just add happiness from the outside. They help remove what's blocking access to something that's already there, a capability that's there, even if it feels like it is 0% there. There's a lot of stuff that we can unlearn, assuming that, if we're in a really terrible or abusive situation or something, then, fixing the material conditions are the most important thing. But there's a lot we can unlearn, and there is very high ceiling here. And as my experience was, this won't be everyone's experience. Some nervous systems need a lot of care. Some living situations need a lot of care, but I do think this is pointing at something real at least. All right. So on day one, we talked about the first jhana. And so I'd like to talk about this stuff a little bit more. It's a little bit of a fun diversion, I think, but it also is very core to the path that I'm tracing with this class. So as I talked about in class one, that we all know what a panic attack is, where we feel tense or something makes us anxious and we tense against that, or we feel some bad sensation, we tense against that, and it loops in on itself. And then there's like a state change where we go from anxious to like maximum freak out and feel like we're terrible. And then there's the counterpart, which is the first jhana, where we do the opposite. There's some pleasant sensation or even a neutral sensation. We are with that, keep our attention with that in a joyful or playful or just non-tensing way. And there is a state transition in that as well, where you can feel like your entire body is full of pleasure greater than you've ever experienced. There's actually, so I talked about the first one in the first class, but there are actually 8 of them. They are in your brain right now. I didn't put them there. That is just a feature of the human brain. So the first one, as I mentioned, pleasure and energy. There's a feedback loop running. This is the most intense of the 8 states. And it can have a vivid afterglow. I experienced a weird, very, very vivid afterglow, lingering effects on my body for over a month. It was for 5 minutes of being in Jhana 1 on the retreat. It's so crazy. I would love to chat about this stuff. There's no time to get into it, but the second one, self-sustaining joy. So there is if you stay with Jhana 1, which is usually 1 and 2 are the ones that you can get into with no prior experience. But the traditional pattern is you experience number 1 and you stay with that sensation without tensing up or trying to change it. And then it naturally transitions into the state of joy. Happiness and wonder, the sense of steering things fades a little bit. I experienced Jhana 2 actually briefly during a therapy session like 2 or 3 years ago. And it was really cool. It felt like being in a childhood home. And I found some like a cupboard full of all the great emotions that I'd experienced as a kid and more. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so many cool things to feel in here. I wasn't literally seeing colors, but if like I was asked to describe what color would it be, I was like, oh, this is a pastel rainbow. Like, I don't know how that just happened, but that was the experience. That also had a nice afterglow. The rest of the day was just like things felt great. I've never experienced anything beyond that. My nervous system is very much like got to work very hard to like clear all the crap to be able to get to this stuff. But I found it so inspiring. This is actually why I started meditating regularly, so I could get to experience these. And I hope that all of you can if you want to. The third one is deep contentment. So naturally, if you stay in number 2 for a while, you move up to number 3. There's the buzzy excitement settles. There's quiet happiness saturating everything. And the fourth one is profound equanimity. I talked about this word a little bit before. Equanimity is like this deep okayness where it's not really like super pleasurable, but it's definitely not bad. It's kind of neutral but peaceful and still. And there's actually 4 more, known as the formless jhanas, where even form and non-form kind of fade into stillness. Various parts of the brain just kind of downregulate a little bit. And one of the people on the retreat with me said that she was doing jhana 5 for a while, and it felt like she was asleep, but not asleep. And it was like, she said it felt like every cell of her body was like regenerating. So cool stuff. There's less and less effort with the jhanas as you move up the ladder. You're getting out of your own way more. Any question? This is like, I know this is like totally bizarre for some people.
Question.
Yeah.
Do medications influence like mess with these at all? And in fact, everything that you've talked about, like if you're like on some sort of a like mood altering medication, does that change things?
I don't have much experience personally, but I have not heard of particular medications being a hard block on these things. I know that the retreat that I went on will kick you out if they find out you're using psychedelics.
Wait, really? As in, like, that's frowned upon?
On the
Even
retreat
during
specifically.
During.
Oh, people can get to the vaginas from using LSD or mushrooms or whatever, but that's just their policy. I think they've had a few cases where people were trying to do too much during the retreat.
As in, like, because of the way people act, or is it like, you know,
I wouldn't want to be responsible for people on psychedelics.
I think that's what
is
it
more
is.
like a legality type, or
I think so. I think like I can't speak to whatever reasons, like whatever bad experiences that people have had doing that. But I do know that people have reached John estates while on mushrooms or LSD or whatever. So it's not incompatible,
Mhm.
but it's just and they won't let you fast either. So I guess people try to bring practices that are potentially too intense into that.
Interesting. Interesting.
Are these like sort of like progressive? Like, or would you to get to the third, you would go from the first to the second and the third?
That is a natural progression.
Okay.
But depending on the way you practice, you might jump into one of the other ones first. And as you get more practiced, most people's first experiences is with one or two. My friend is meditating he's been meditating for I think decades, and he's never tried to do the jhanas, but he says, "Oh, I think I've done like five only." So yeah, different practices will take you different places. If it's something that focuses on physical sensation, you'll probably go into number one. My experience with number two, like I had a big cry before this therapy session, like a couple of days before, and I was still kind of loose from that. That probably affected me, but it was more of an emotional thing that put me into J2.
Also wondered, are these pretty transitory states, or I mean, if you get, or is the goal, or do some people achieve these states of experience where they linger, like for days? Because I think you said you had a carryover effect, but would you say you were still experiencing the jhana, or just sort of like the lingering effect?
The lingering effects
Okay.
were wild.
Yeah.
I was in jhana 1 for 5 minutes,
Okay.
only 5 minutes.
Okay.
But people, I mean, there's all sorts of traditions. I think it's a Burmese tradition that says it doesn't count unless you're in the jhana without any thoughts for like 2 or 3 hours. And I'm not going for that. But that is something that people can do.
I'm always suspect of a tradition that says it doesn't count
Yeah,
for anything.
yeah.
I have to admit that 5 through 8 seem kind of woo-woo from this description.
Yes. Yeah, well, it's various. I think what's happening is parts of the brain are like not like shutting down, but like kind of going into like a sleep-like state or something. Where actually, if you're in 8, the natural evolution is to what's called a cessation, where your consciousness blinks off. It's deeper than sleep. It's closer to being in. It's not completely like anesthesia, but it is closer to anesthesia than normal sleep would be. And there are people, this is again a practice that is called Nirodha Samapatti, which is like cessation of consciousness. Some of these people, again, monks, I'm never going to do this myself, they can go into the stuff so deep that they're like, they don't move for a week. They get picked up and put into their bed at home because like everyone else gets tired of like sitting with them. So yeah, people are like, you can have a profound amount of like control over your mind and experience with time and with practice.
So wait, a whole week like this person didn't eat?
Yeah.
They didn't drink anything?
Yeah, their heartbeat goes to almost zero. The respiration rate is like, I forget, it's like 1 or 2 breaths a minute or something. It's just like,
That's
yeah.
And there's like documented cases of this happening.
Yeah, one guy named Delson Armstrong. He's worked with some of the people that I've talked with or talked about in this class.
Wow.
Not that I'm, this is necessary just for well-being, but it's kind of wild to see what people can do.
So like imagine coming out of that. Would you just be ravenous or would you just be like in the same state you were when you went into it? Like it's so hard to
I don't know. Well,
imagine.
the one thing I can tell you is that they say that for some people, this is a transformative experience, even if you just can do a cessation for a few seconds. Because when you are resuming normal consciousness, you actually can observe the parts of your consciousness, your brain, coming online. So when you're waking up from sleep, you're kind of groggy, like happens kind of, you don't really have full access to it. Sometimes you can observe it a little bit when you're waking up, but with if you're doing some people call it the ninth jhana, it's not really a jhana, it's just that shut down state. When you come back, you have crystal clear observation of the various subsystems of your brain coming back online. And that is a profound shift for some people for whatever reason.
Like, so I have never experienced anything like it, but from what I've read, kind of like people describe just kind of like as if like just like your life is like a movie, and just like while you're in cessation, just like the frames are just cut out. It's kind of like you're like doing it in cessation, and like you just like kind of like anesthesia in that way, and like often there's this like Alex was saying, kind of like association, like really like nice afterglow, kind of like like you like rebooted a computer and everything's running a lot more smooth.
Clearing out the RAM.
Yeah. I always like this one. And this is one of the things that inspired me to go for the retreat that I did. I'll just give you a second to read that.
Fudge. Fudge. Oh, wow, what?
Yeah. So I don't want to harp on this too much because maybe you don't have the time for it or you don't care about it. But one thing I want to bring up is that when you have access to deep states of okayness, of happiness, of pleasure, whatever, it lets you deal with difficult material much more easily and smoothly. Difficult memories, when you're holding them against a backdrop of deep okayness or peace or happiness that is just self-sustaining based on what is in your brain, is a fantastic background in which to process them. And so people have cleared out all sorts of traumatic experiences by processing. I think Daniel Ingram said that he was like a emergency room doctor, right? And of course, he's seen untold, thousands of amputations and terrible, gory stuff. And in these meditative states, I think it just happened once where he was just seeing all the images of these terrible, violent things flashing before his eyes, but he was in this state of okayness. And it's like, oh, like he could feel that he was clearing out all of these, unresolved sensations in his experience. And then he never had to deal with them ever again. So very powerful space in which to do therapeutic work. And this okay, come on. This ties into, well, if you're experiencing, and this is what some people experience Jhana 1 as, full body orgasm for an hour. If you can do this on your own, why are you not addicted to it? And the answer is like people just aren't. The mechanism for like creating like I gotta do this thing is the exact opposite from how you start to do these things. So it is inherently anti-addictive, which is also kind of wild to imagine. But that's what the consistent reporting is from the many, many people that I've seen do this sort of practice. Okay. I don't know about all this stuff. I'm not going to deal with it. Even if you never pursue this, the mechanism we've discussed all course, attention as training signal is real and goes much, much further than most people imagine. I wanted to give you a window into that. The capacity is in you, even if pleasure and feeling good feels difficult. And even small tastes like gratitude, compassion, savoring a moment of ease use the same circuitry at lower intensity, and you can kick off gentler versions of these feedback loops that occur over longer time periods. So let's talk about gratitude. One little practice that we can do, which is the same mechanism, gentler intensity, training the system to weight positive predictions a little bit higher. So a basic version of a gratitude practice is just write or say 3 things you're grateful for before bed for 2 weeks. A better version, don't just list them, feel into them. So actually let that land in your body because as we've seen, body sensations have a lot of weight when our brain is updating what it feels like to be alive. Yeah. And yeah, the difference between I'm grateful for my health and actually feeling gratitude for the health is kind of like the difference between training and actually training. Which, if you've seen the studies on like weightlifting, people who just imagine lifting weights still get stronger. So this is not entirely useless at all. It's like it does a thing. But the more we put into it with our bodies and with our actual felt sense, the more we get out of it.
Wait, say that one more time. You're telling me that if I imagine doing something, I can get better at it?
Oh yeah, there's good research on this.
Like, what do you mean by good research? Like, is there more examples of beyond weightlifting? Because, like, right now, okay, I've been putting off practice for my upcoming jigsaw puzzle competition.
Mhm.
And I don't know what it is. I don't know if I'm just like burnt out from puzzles or what, or I just rather do other things, but I just cannot like motivate myself to do the thousands of puzzles in my house right now. And part of me is just like, man, I don't know, like I can't get myself to do this. And I also like don't want to push myself and punish myself to do it. But I am constantly like thinking about it. And I'm wondering, now that you've said this, I'm like, am I getting better by like kind of thinking about it, but not actually doing it?
I think if you were to think about it and actually like do the thing in your mind, that would move the needle a little bit. But thinking about it and saying, ugh, I don't want to do that, and then not doing it, maybe doing the opposite.
Okay, so that makes sense. But what I mean by like thinking about it is that I'm also kind of breaking it down a little bit into the, muscle memory / strategy, and then just like doing small. This is a specific example for you guys, so I'm sorry if this is not relevant. Like I literally did just 5 minutes the other day where I just flipped a bunch of pieces over just to like time myself and think about, is it better if I just actively flip things over or grab a bunch of pieces and then flip them over, and realizing like one way is not actually as good as I thought it was. And now I've just been thinking about that for the past couple of days, but not actually doing any.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's some carryover, sure. But like muscle memory works even if you're not doing the thing. So yeah.
Have you read The Inner Game of Tennis?
I've heard so much about it. I haven't read it myself. I've read excerpts, but not the whole thing.
The Inner Game of Tennis. I read it a while ago, so I don't know if I'll be able to give you a super good synopsis, but it's a really good book. very tangentially related to what we're talking about here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it talks about the like how to learn how basically how to stop overanalyzing how to do things in a way. It's a cool book. It's especially if you like to do physical things and you like to learn to do things.
And learning by watching. In fact, they excerpt that in the materials for the genre retreat I did.
That's
Oh,
Wow.
it's a cool. Yeah, I like it. It makes me feel like if I, sometimes I have dreams that I'm like amazing at roller skating, like I can do crazy things, and then I try to just like, and then I try to go actually do those things, and of course I cannot do them. But the book talks a lot about like being able to like very holistically envision, like if you're watching a pro tennis player, just like be able to imagine doing what they're doing instead of like analyzing all the different components of what they're doing. I'm doing a terrible job describing it. It's a short book. You should read it.
sounds great.
All right. So we are actually at time. So I'm not going to make us do this, but I'll send out the slides and definitely give it a try if you can. One thing I want to touch on is speaking from your head, your heart, or your gut. So speaking from your head is a cognitive thing, like, oh, what do you appreciate? Oh, it's the thing that I should appreciate the most. Your heart is like, is there something with an emotional content to it? And then the gut is more like, what is my feeling that I maybe can't explain, but like, I really like doing, playing mini golf lately, and that cognitively is just this tiny little thing, but something in me is like, oh, that I feel like that's helping. Touching briefly on therapy, like this is another huge rabbit hole. Um, there were a few studies that I looked at that I wanted to mention, though, just to drive home the point that therapy is awesome. There's a lot of different modalities, and I recommend you do it. If you want some of the more wacky woo-woo stuff, I know some people also that I found very helpful. But this is like regular therapy people. They found that for whatever definition of very effective, they felt that 40% of therapists were very effective. This is pulling together a few different studies. 17%, 1/6 were actually actively harmful. People got worse when they worked with them. But shifting from a mediocre to an above average therapist, again, recovery is an arbitrary thing, and you try to capture these subjective things, you're going to lose some stuff. But you have a 50% greater chance of doing better with an above average therapist. So the be your own detective stuff absolutely still applies when you're seeing a professional. You're the one who steers this course for yourself. So if the vibe is not right, then please don't stick with somebody who's not helping. Someone who tracks outcomes, who we feel like you've got a strong alliance with, is good. Years of experience, degree type, theoretical orientation. Even I don't know what modalities they looked at. I don't think it was the wackier ones, but they found that didn't matter that much. It was more about the therapists themselves. Yeah, so for the path forward, it's deeply non-monotonic, meaning there's ups and downs all the time. Even in the worst moments, once you've done enough of this stuff, you begin to know that it can be otherwise. And patterns do over time change. Fewer bad moments, recoveries a little bit faster. There will be some breakthroughs that feel like they're going to fix things forever, and they almost never do. But that's fine because we can learn from that. We can use the muscle memory. We can use our memory of that felt sense. And we can use it as a compass to orient ourselves in the future because we know where something good was. And eventually the floor increases and so does the ceiling. And yeah, consistency over intensity. If you do nothing else from this course going forward, just try. When you feel tense, just do one little breath practice. The next breath, the exhale, just make it a little bit longer. Give a little vocal juice if you can. One sit, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, even 10 minutes can make a big difference. And then a little bit of gratitude practice when you get up or go to bed. Just name a few things and feel into them if you can. So maybe 35 minutes a week if you do this, or just pick anything you like from the class and make it a practice. And I'm definitely interested in doing more stuff in this space in the future, having maybe a little community where we can share what's worked for us and what hasn't. So I always am interested in your feedback and what you'd like to participate in going forward. When things don't work, we talked about all of this at some point, but you can check the substrate, medical conditions rising up, different entry point, meditation feels wrong or bad, do body work if you're able to do that. Gentle exercise with body awareness can be a great reset. And then support teachers, guides, therapists, groups. And the relation dimension. So loneliness is a health risk comparable to smoking, and community support really makes a difference. And that's part of why we're here at Praxis. So thanks to Arthur and Dory for doing so much work with Praxis and helping to organize all this. So there it is. The work is ongoing and the path isn't smooth, but it's real and you already started. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. And yeah, I'll open up the floor for questions. We're 5 minutes over, but I'm happy to talk more if there's anything that you'd like to talk about. Yeah, I will send out an email with the slides, with the video, and a bunch of resources that I've found helpful in putting together all this stuff. There were a few video guided meditation things that I used in the previous run of this course, and I didn't use them in favor of just doing it all myself. But I will include some of those in the email, some other resources. If you would like to donate, then I will include information on that too. Absolutely not required. And yeah, feel free to discuss anything or feel free to go if you want to go.
Did you say you'll maybe do the course again, or?
I will do something in this space. I'm leaning towards making it a little bit more experiential and providing this as materials, but maybe only talking for 5 or 10 minutes as a class. But I haven't decided on that. So what you would like to see and what everyone else would like to see will affect how I do this. So I appreciate your feedback.
Yeah, so someone asked if you could sign up for the same class again, which I did. I was in the last version of this course, and so from my experience, I got a lot out of it both times. So for me,
Cool.
it was well worth attending again.
Cool.
And I don't know if it did seem like you changed it up, maybe added things that weren't. Not that I remember exactly, like have a complete memory of everything, but it does seem like there was different and more expanded material. It seemed like, is that true?
Yes. Yeah. I thought I would just add a new class, like a new session. So the last time it was 4 sessions. This is 5. I thought I was just going to add one more and throw in a few things that I didn't get time for, and then I wound up putting in far more than I had planned. So yes, there's a lot of new stuff and a lot of reorganization of stuff.
Yeah.
So yes.
To me, it's the kind of stuff to me that I don't always keep in focus. So to me, it was good to see it again, to like re-emphasize certain things in my mind. And I also do the slides too afterwards, because like I said, there's a lot of helpful information, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
I support the idea to make it more experiential.
Cool.
I feel like I'm always supportive of like the shoot, what's the phrase? Popular education format, you know. But I also, I mean, I liked the slides a lot. I liked how you organized it. I think that it had a very clear narrative, which
Cool.
made sense.
Thank you. Yeah, there's just so much. Like there's years and years of stuff I wanted to put in. I think I did an okay job, but it's still a lot of stuff I'm throwing at you. And then Eve's class that I did in your garage with. That was a really interesting class through Praxis that I did. It was on Wednesdays, and it was. How's the best way to describe that?
I don't know. I think about this. I mean, Eve talked about how like it's like a way to unlock your creative agency to like play, but I feel like it doesn't actually capture what was happening in the class.
Yeah, at one point I described it as like a Buddhist kindergarten cult or something, and that's a little bit silly. But it was activities like you might do in kindergarten or more like you might do in some sort of improv class. And it was really neat. It was things that I never thought I'd be doing again, like gluing things to paper and cutting it up with scissors and but all the activities had some subtle depth to them that I thought was really interesting. And so having some sort of mix that was like half that and half this might be fun.
And Eve will be teaching that class again.
Cool.
I don't know when, but she definitely wants to teach that class more. So.
That was a different session or was I don't know, not semester
Yeah, it was this term
Term.
for that, yeah.
what was it called?
This is for everyone,
Okay.
or this is for everybody. One of those two.
Yeah, the instructor is Eve. We're looking forward to the future.
Oh, yeah, something.
Yeah, and there's Eve's actually going to Vibe Camp, which is a camp they do. It's an annual kind of build your own event camp out in Maryland in June. And a lot of the events that people put on there seem like things that might have gone well with Eve's class. And so I told her about it. She's like, "Oh, I'm going." And so she's going to go. I'm going to go also in this June. So you can look into that if that kind of vibe is something you're interested in.
Kill not the part of you that cringes, but no, kill not what is cringe, but the part of you that cringes.
Yes, yes.
What is that from? Did you know that?
Oh, it's just a meme.
Oh.
It's a good one though, right?
Yeah.
That reminds me.
Yes. Exactly.
So I hope I made you cringe a little bit in this class.
I gotta head out.
All right,
Thank
thanks
you,
for doing
Alex.
this.
Thank you, Al.
You think it's right.
I feel like the dogs are definitely acting different this week with the time change.
Yeah.
I missed the last essay project. Was that your place? No, what was the essay?
I forget the. I also forget all the title of the audio, but it was about
Yes,
experience
let
of
me
like
cancel this.
the woman who. She's a pretty like big writer herself.
All right, I'm going to end the video call. Thanks for joining us.
Like